Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast has some news and notes around the NFL, including a big-time player getting a big-time contract extension. Plus, we'll take you back inside the Raiders locker room. Also, the Raiders have 26 unrestricted free agents. How many need to come back? We'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2. Your calls and texts will close out the show. It's all coming up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, January 11th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the Locked On Raider podcast free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube. Thanks to my man Ari. He's doing a fantastic job. We've been at it now for a few months, and he's been doing a great job making sure we're up on YouTube each and every day, and he continues to try to improve it each and every day. If you could see how many times Ari's in my ear like, Q, we should do this. Q, we should do that. And I'm like, Ari, are we on YouTube today? He's like, yep. I said, all right, we're good. No, Q, we should do this. Q, we should do that. My man is always trying to reinvent and trying to make things better. So definitely shout out to my man, Ari, at Ari Produces on Twitter. You could check him out. Today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than the Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. First of all, I want to get to some news around the NFL, some news that broke on Tuesday, and one was breaking news and one was just a rumor that's being put out there, but I thought both were pretty important and significant across the NFL. And it's funny, the first one was about Ravens linebacker Roquan Smith, and the reason why this is funny is because I've been a big fan of Roquan Smith since he was at Georgia. That's the first thing. The Bears obviously drafted him, and he was the guy that I thought that the Raiders should try to make a run at, but the Bears selected him way too high for the Raiders to get an opportunity to get him. And then the Bears traded him to the Baltimore Ravens this past year, right before the trade deadline. And again, a time I thought that the Raiders should go out and make a move for him, but I realized they weren't one linebacker away from being a great team, even though he would have been a great addition. So the Ravens picked him up. Of course they did. And on Tuesday, I was at the Raiders facility, the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center. JT and Lincoln Kennedy and myself, we were recording the Raiders Roundtable, and we were talking about the linebacker position and the defense in general, saying that they need to improve their linebackers. They need to go get an alpha dog at that linebacker position. So I interrupted JT, and I said they need to go get a Roquan Smith. And so we all had a conversation about Roquan Smith. Immediately after that, all of a sudden the news popped up. Ian Rappaport, he hit up on Twitter, and all of a sudden my phone went off. The Ravens agree in principle with all-pro linebacker Roquan Smith, the highest paid at his position in NFL history, with a 5-year, $100 million deal, $45 million fully guaranteed and $60 million in total guarantees. Huge. The first off-ball linebacker to get $20 million per year. Roquan represented himself. That was from Ian Rappaport on Twitter, and I promise you that came as soon as we were talking about, well, Roquan Smith on the Raider Roundtable. So that's the type of guy that the Raiders need to make that Patrick Graham defense go. They need to have that alpha dog at the linebacker position. You heard Max Crosby on Tuesday's show talking about guys that want to be great and guys that are willing to put in the work to be great. That's a Roquan Smith. The guy that he's talking about is like a Roquan Smith, and it's been a very long time since the Raiders have had that guy at the linebacker position, but he is off the market, and you knew the Ravens were going to go ahead and give him a contract extension once they traded for him. They gave up draft capital. They weren't going to just go ahead and trade for him, let him play the rest of the year, and then let him walk. You knew that wasn't going to happen, but what's significant about that, for anyone who thought that, well, maybe the Raiders can go and get Lamar Jackson, I never believed that, but now that they've agreed to a deal with Roquan Smith, already got that out of the way, they can use the franchise tag on Lamar Jackson. So don't expect either one of those guys to go. Obviously, Roquan's not going anywhere. He has a contract extension. Lamar's not going anywhere either. They're not going to let that happen. Also, another piece of news across the NFL came out from Jordan Schultz. He's at The Score, used to be at Yahoo. He's a really good dude, covers the league like a glove. He put out there sources. The Cardinals plan to try and trade all-pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. D-Hop has 2 years and $34.3 million left on his contract and is likely looking to get a new deal. Owner Michael Bidwill plans to express this to GM candidates. Again, that's from my guy Jordan Schultz. And the thing I found interesting about that is they don't have a GM and they don't have a head coach. but yet they're putting out the news that they're going to try to trade their best player, which is wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. So, yeah, if you're a head coach and you're thinking about that Arizona job, hey, by the way, your best wide receiver is on the trade blocks, and you don't even know it because you're not the head coach and they don't have a GM. And I understand he was suspended last year because of PEDs. I mean, he's obviously getting a little bit older now. He wants a contract extension. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to want to trade him. I just don't think that you want to put that out there before you get a head coach and a GM. Like, let those guys make that decision. But they put it out there already, and Jordan Schultz isn't one of those guys that's just going to throw something out there just for the sake of doing it. When he puts something out there, similar to Vinny Bonsignore, when he puts something out there, all of a sudden it's because there's some legs to it. So found that to be pretty interesting when it comes to Arizona, and they got a lot going on this offseason. The Raiders have a lot going on this offseason. The Cardinals have a whole lot going on this offseason. So those are the NFL news and notes I just kind of wanted to pass along. Now I want to dip inside the Raiders locker room. And on Monday, when the Raiders were cleaning out their locker, we got a chance to talk to head coach Josh McDaniels. He had his season wrap-up media session. Well, then we had an opportunity to get inside the locker room. We talked to multiple players, including Nate Hobbs. And I found out inside the locker room, Nate is actually injured again, his hand, but it's not the same injury that he had week 5 against Kansas City that he ended up going on IR for and not coming back for a while, and you saw him struggling down the stretch. On Saturday's game against the Chiefs at Allegiant Stadium, he left the game because of his hand. And I was wondering, like, what's going on? So I thought he just re-aggravated it. Well, we found out on Monday inside the locker room that it's a new injury to his hand. So unfortunate for Nate. I mean, this was just really his second year in the league, was a one to kind of forget because it just didn't go the way that he wanted to. I still think he's a really good player. I think he can contribute to that Raiders defense, but he's got a lot to prove. So here's Nate Hobbs in the Raiders locker room, and he starts off just talking about the confidence that the coaching staff had to put him outside because his rookie year he played as a slot. On his second year, he played on the outside. So Nate Hobbs starts off talking about the confidence that the team had put him on the outside.
I felt like that spoke volumes to the confidence and the trust he had in me, and I can't do nothing but appreciate that and try to take advantage of every opportunity I get.
Hey, obviously you had the injury this year and had to play a few different spots, kind of in and out, just based off of health. How would you kind of summarize this year for you personally? Was it tough for you at all mentally, kind of dealing with all the change and being out the field for the first time?
It was definitely different because I never been injured during the season, especially for that long. Like, probably the last time I probably was injured during the season was in high school. That was like preseason. So up until now, I've never really been injured and missed games. So it was something that I had to learn, you know what I'm saying, how to do. I feel like it's an unspoken art to, like, be able to miss games, come back in the middle of the season, and get straight back to it. You know what I'm saying? That's something I had to learn to do, and I'll be able to do in the future. You know what I'm saying? If need be. So, but you know what I'm saying? The season went how it went. I feel like everything happens for a reason. So that's just something I learned.
Last offseason, you had to start off with surgery. I know you still got your hand in the cast, but some of you're able to do more than you were at this time last year going into the offseason. What's kind of your mindset when it comes to improving and trying to get better going into year 3?
Really right now I'm focused on recovery right now because last year I had surgery, got right back into it. Like, it was really year-round. This year I want to focus on recovery and really, like, the awareness and mental aspect of the game because that's what separates players. Everybody is super athletic. Everybody, you know what I'm saying, has got here. You have to have some level of talent, a lot of level of talent, honestly, to be here. But I think what separates guys is cerebral process and awareness and things like that.
You've seen the vision, you know the direction that the team and the defense in particular wants to go. Are you confident that it's headed in the right direction?
I am confident. I feel like a lot of games we played were decided by 4 or 5 snaps. You know what I'm saying? Every game we played was a super close game, no matter who we was playing, except for when we played the Saints in this past game. So I feel like we just those couple plays off, which is just really communication and the defense and offense all being on one page. So, and I feel like that comes with experience and time. So.
What do you like about the Josh McDaniels coaching style and the confidence in the staff going forward?
Yeah, I feel like he was very by the book, but you need coaches like that who's going, no matter what day it is, no matter, you know what I'm saying, who's hurting, who's not, they're going to be like, nah, because it's power and consistency. You know what I'm saying? It's power and routine. You stick to a routine no matter if you want to do it or if you don't want to do it that day. It gets you better. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like his program he has set up for us and the schedule, it keeps us on a routine to where it gives us a great chance to win.
So there's Nate Hobbs in the Raiders locker room right there talking about, a lot of different things, including confidence in the coaching staff. Right, he said he has his belief in the coaching staff and that they're headed in the right direction. All they got to do is work out some things. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with just time on task, being out there, repetition, going over it time and time and time and time again. And, again, Nate Hobbs going into his third year of his career coming up this next season, he's got a lot to prove. I was really excited about him being on the outside. I thought he could be one of those alpha dog corners, and he just really wasn't able to get it done after he got injured in week 5 when he came back. Just seemed like he was behind on a step or two and just wasn't able to be the guy that he wanted to be. And it's funny, the 1 week he came back against the Chargers, it seemed like, okay, that's the Nate Hobbs that we all remember. But after that, you've seen him just getting beat. He wasn't making tackles. He wasn't wrapping up. And obviously a lot of that had to do with the hand. And then he injures his hand again in the final game of the season against Kansas City at Allegiant Stadium. He's got to find a way to be 100% healthy, get into training camp, and show who he can be, whether he's going to play in the slot or on the outside. They need someone with a Nate Hobbs mentality, but playing at a Nate Hobbs level. So we'll see what happens. But there's still plenty of more locker room sound that I have that I'll bring to the podcast throughout the course of the week. We got Josh Jacobs from Monday. I thought was some really good stuff talking about if he wants to be a Raider or not, and it's got to make sense. And there was a lot of good conversation from Josh Jacobs, plenty of conversations that we had in the Raiders locker room. So I got a lot of that sound that I'll sprinkle in the rest of the week here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, the Raiders have 26 unrestricted free agents. Who are the priorities to bring back? It's a conversation that I had on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Tuesday. Want to bring that to the podcast on today's show. We'll do it after I tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the show. And the first one is TurboTax because, well, it's tax time. Once you look at the calendar and it crosses over to January, everyone starts thinking about taxes. It's just that simple. Go to TurboTax. You don't have to do your taxes. You can meet with the expert. They'll do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed. So you can relax, feel good to be done with your taxes. Doesn't it, right? Because you don't have to do it. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. I also want to tell you about the Ultimate Football GM. And this is the time of year when the Ultimate Football GM really plays out in real life, right? I mean, you want to be Dave Ziegler, you want to be a GM of a NFL team, this game, Ultimate Football GM, is going to help you do that. We always talk about draft picks. We talk about free agency. Hell, coming up in segment number 2, going to talk about the free agents that the Raiders have and who should come back and who shouldn't. That's part of being part of the Ultimate Football GM. It's about hiring the right coaches and coordinators, training players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and draft, all the ups and downs of an NFL season. It's challenging and realistic. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. Right now, all Locked On Raider podcast listeners get 100% free boost of their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's all caps from the game store. Again, Locked On, all caps. Make sure you check it out today. To download the game, it's simple. Visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to go over the 26 unrestricted free agents that the Raiders have heading into the offseason. And, it's easy for us to all talk about what the Raiders need to add to the team, who they need to bring in, who they need to go and draft, what they could do to make the team better. Before they can do any of that, like Josh McDaniels told us on Monday at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, it's evaluation time. Right now, he's going over the coaching staff. He's going over the players on the roster, evaluating each and every one of them, going over game film, going over what the coaches are called, how they're coaching up these players, making ultimate decisions. And that's what they're supposed to do. I mean, again, it's only January 11th, so you have time to make these decisions because the new league year has not begun. So So, of course, you're going to come up with an idea and a laundry list of guys that you think, all right, these free agents could come in and help us. And this is our target for the draft. I mean, guys are definitely ramping up for the draft. But before you can really figure out exactly what you need to be able to look at your own roster and say, okay, this guy is expendable, this guy is not. We have to bring this guy back. So as I was looking at the free agents, the unrestricted free agents for the Raiders right now, they have 26 guys on their roster. When Dave Ziegler, Champ Kelly, Josh McDaniels took over, they had about 25 players as well that they had to replace. I mean, they had basically half a roster when they took over the team. So a lot of guys they signed to one-year deals. So I'm going to go over the 26 guys. And I talked about this on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Tuesday. And I gave, my guys that I thought should come back. But I, for the majority, just allow people to call in and say, okay, this is who I think should come back. Text in, okay, this is who I think should come back. But I want to really kind of get into it, kind of deep dive into these 26 players and who I really believe should come back and why they should be priorities to come back. So I'll go ahead and look over this list right now. Cleve Ferrell, Anthony Averett, Brandon Parker, Denzel Perryman, Josh Jacobs, Jerry Tillery, Mac Hollins, Rock Yassin, Jakob Johnson, Keelan Cole, Teron Harmon, Jermaine Illuminor, Jayon Brown, Page 2, again, 26 guys, Andrew Billings, Amir Abdullah, Isaac Rochelle, Jordan Jenkins, Micah Kaiser, Tayshawn Bauer, Matthias Farley, Sidney Jones, Roderick Teamer, Jesper Horsted, Curtis Bolton, Jarrett Stidham, Foster Morrow. All these guys, all 26 of those guys are unrestricted free agents. They can sign with any team coming up when the new league year begins. So out of those 26, who are realistically guys that need to come back? And the reason I had a very small list, and I did, believe me, out of 26 guys, I had 5, and I really could narrow it down to 4 if you really want to be 100% honest about it. I could see 4 and say, you know what, the 5th one, yeah, the team could do without. I absolutely could do that, and I'll go over the guys that I picked. But I'm looking at this list as, yeah, there's a lot of guys on there that are good players, but they're not next-level great players, right? And also there's guys that they'll bring back probably on one-year deals that are special teams guys or just guys for depth, but they're not priorities. And that's what I'm really talking about here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Really want to talk about the priorities that need to come back in 2023. So, of course, when I'm looking at it, Josh Jacobs off top. There's a no-brainer, right? And so I'm looking at this list on Spotrac.com, and it's funny because they have him listed as unrestricted free agent, and they said his market value. So his market value, according to Spotrac, 4 years, $51 million with $12.8 million is per year his contract. So that's the kind of contract that they're looking at. Now, when he talked in the Raiders locker room on Monday, he said that, yeah, he wants to be back with the Raiders. And matter of fact, I want to play that locker room sound. I should play it in segment number 3. I want to get to calls and texts, but I would love to play it in segment number 3 where he says it's got to make sense. Well, it makes sense. Joel Corey from CBS Sports, he's a former agent, really good with contracts. He tweeted out, if I was Josh Jacobs' agent, I would try to reset the running back market. Well, the running back market right now is Christian McCaffrey. He's the highest paid running back in the league. He makes more than $16 million a year. I don't see the Raiders paying $16 million a year for any running back. Josh Jacobs or not. And I really want to see the Raiders bring him back. But according to Spotrac.com, they thought a fair market value for Jacobs would be 4 years, $51 million. They didn't say and specify how much guaranteed, but $12.8 a year. If he would have got his 5th-year option picked up by the team, it would have been about $8 million. So $12.8 million a year is obviously a lot more than the $8 million that he would have got paid. And the franchise tag, which I do believe the Raiders are going to apply on Josh Jacobs so he can't get out of town, is 10.1. So if they decide to give him a 4-year deal with $51 million, depending on how they structure it, I don't think that they'd commit to him for 4 full years. I think that they would structure it where it's maybe a 4-year deal, but they can get out of it after 2 and still give him a lot of front-loaded money. I can see that happening. So Josh Jacobs is obviously the number one must priority as far as I'm concerned, bring back of your own free agents. Number 2, Jarrett Stidham. And not Jarrett Stidham to be the starting quarterback, Jarrett Stidham to be a really good backup or compete with any young dude that they might bring in. I've said it many times. I'll continue to say it many times. I believe the Raiders will go out and get a veteran quarterback for the 2023 season, maybe the 2024 season, and they'll have some young guy learning behind whoever that guy is. Whoever it is. It doesn't matter to me. I just think that they're in win-now mode. They have Devontae Adams, and he wants to catch passes from a veteran that he's comfortable with. And I don't think that's going to be a rookie. I just don't. So Jarrett Stidham, in my opinion, should come back and be a glorified backup. Look, that guy made about, $75,000 this year? Wasn't a whole lot of money as far as NFL money goes. So if they were to give him a 3 to 4 year deal and say, hey, you're going to be the backup and also compete with the young guy and make the money make sense, and I don't know what that means for a backup quarterback. Maybe it's $3 million a year, whatever. That's a whole lot of money compared to what he made in 2022. So I can see Jarrett Stidham and that making sense for him. Again, Jarrett Stidham is more valuable to the Raiders than he is to any other team because he knows the system. If he goes to any other team in the league, which he could, he doesn't know the system and will have to learn it. He's been in this system for multiple years. He was drafted by the Patriots, so he's been with Josh McDaniels his whole career. So with the Raiders, he's super valuable. So Jarrett Stidham was my second guy. My third guy, Jakob Johnson, the fullback. And that's not going to be a big contract, but I think they should bring him back because he helped lead the way for Josh Jacobs to be the leading rusher in the league. Right? I mean, he had Alec Ingold before that. Alec Ingold signed a big contract free agent deal with the Miami Dolphins. The Raiders let him go. And Jakob Johnson, there was a question, okay, what's he going to do? Well, all he did is go out there and help lead the way for Josh Jacobs to lead the league in rushing. And I'm not saying it was all just Jakob Johnson and all just Josh Jacobs because the offensive line had a lot to do with that as well. But I think at the fullback position, a guy that, again, knows the system, is very comfortable with Josh McDaniels and company, Jakob Johnson is the guy you got to bring back. Number 4 for me, Duron Harmon. I think he's a big-time player on the defensive side of things. He's a guy that makes plays. The Raiders don't have enough playmakers. He studies film. He understands the ins and outs of plays and, where to line up, where to be when he sees a certain formation so he could try to make plays. I think Duron Harmon's been a nice addition to the back end of that defense, even though they need, obviously, a lot more playmakers on that defensive side of things. So that's 4 right there. And I could be compromised. I can eliminate this 5th one. I picked Mac Hollins. He was my 5th guy. He was the guy that stepped into a role where he was expected to be probably the 4th wide receiver. It was going to be Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and Hunter Renfrow. And I know Waller's a tight end, but he's still a guy that catches a bunch of passes. And then all of a sudden, Mac Hollins was going to slide into that role. Well, Waller went down, Renfrow went down, and all of a sudden it's like Mac Hollins became wide receiver number 2. That was not a role that he expected to be in. He's a guy that's in really good condition. He's a guy that excels on special teams. He was a captain on special teams. So I could see the team keeping him around. He was also a guy that keeps players in the locker room really loose. So I could see them bringing Mac Hollins around, or keeping him around. But I had multiple people hit me up, on my show on Raider Nation Radio 920 and said, Mac Hollins could be replaced. If they let him go, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Mac Hollins is the guy. Some people say, well, he doesn't really know all the routes. He was looking a little lost out there, and that's true. He's got to deep dive into his playbook and learn it and really get it down pat. But I can see them bringing him back. But that's really it. And what does that tell you about the team? Out of 26 guys, and there's other arguments that you could have, like Cleve Ferrell. You could bring him back for depth, but I don't think he's a priority. Denzel Perryman, that was one that a lot of people mentioned. I like Denzel Perryman a lot. He was a Pro Bowler in 2021. This past season, obviously not. The problem why I didn't pick Denzel Perryman is because he's been banged up so much. He only played in 12 games in 2022 out of 17. And unfortunately for him, the story of his career before he got with the Raiders, before they traded with Carolina to bring him in, was he was always injured. He was banged up quite a bit. And now all of a sudden injuries are really starting to pile in. If you bring in Denzel Perryman, you bring him back, you're almost guaranteed that, okay, he's going to miss 3 or 4 games a year. And that I don't think is okay. You got to have a Roquan Smith, the guy that I mentioned in the first segment. You got to have one of those guys, a guy that you can depend on, a guy who's always available, a guy who can go sideline to sideline and really not have any weaknesses. And Denzel Perryman, for everything that he does really good, he does have weaknesses. He has a little bit of hole in his game. So if they didn't bring Denzel Perryman back, I wouldn't be shocked. That's why he didn't become a priority for me. But I know a lot of people thought he was a priority. I know people can argue for Jerry Tillery. He was okay. I thought he did some good things, but I thought he was okay. Rock Yassin didn't really impress me. Keelan Cole, as far as I'm concerned, bye, Felicia. Jermaine Illuminor, he could be a swing tackle, but if he's your starting right tackle in 2023, you did something wrong. Jayon Brown never lived up to the hype. I thought he was going to be a good addition. Never was. Andrew Billings, I like him a lot. Covered him when he was at Waco High, covered him when he was at Baylor. I think that he is a good depth piece. I don't think he's a starter, but you could bring him back as far as like I said, depth and maybe a 1 to 2 year deal, but it's not a priority. Amir Abdullah, everyone knows I liked him a lot. I like what he brought to the table, and I didn't know what he was going to bring to the table, but I liked him a lot. Never was able to take that one back to the house, but if he comes back on a roll like that, that's fine. But again, not a priority. Jordan Jenkins, Isaac Rochelle, Micah Kaiser, Tashawn Bauer, Matthias Farley, Sidney Jones, Roderick Teamer, Jesper Horsted, Curtis Bolton, Foster Morrow. I can see an argument for Foster, but you see all the players that I just went through that was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I can see the argument for Foster, but as far as I'm concerned, he put a lot of balls on the ground. So unless you're comfortable with, having a Foster Morrow that is going to put a lot of balls on the ground or might not be as consistent as you like, if they don't bring him back, then okay, I'm okay with that. And really, honestly, they could bring in another veteran tight end to pair him up with Darren Waller and probably get just as good as production, if not better, depending on who they bring in as the quarterback this offseason. So I want to hear from you, Raider Nation. 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Again, 707-654-4693. You can hit me up with a call or a text. Let me know who you would prioritize. There's 26 guys. I found 5. And really, 4 if you want to be, if you want to really cut all the fat. I could say 4 and be comfortable with that and let Mac Hollins go. But who would you prioritize as guys that they should bring back of their own unrestricted free agents? Cleve Farrell, Anthony Averett, Brandon Parker, Denzel Perryman, Josh Jacobs, Jerry Tillery, Mac Hollins, Rak Yassin, Jakob Johnson, Keelan Cole, Jerron Harmon, Jermaine Illuminor, Jayon Brown, Andrew Billings, Amir Abdullah, Isaac Rochelle, Jordan Jenkins, Micah Kaiser, Tashawn Bauer, Matthias Farley, Sidney Jones, Roderick Teamer, Jesper Horsted, Curtis Bolton, Jarrett Stidham, and Foster Morrow. Those are the 26 guys. Want to hear from you. 707-654-4693. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, which is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other players. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projection on any sport you watch. NFL, of course, is the playoff time. NBA, NHL, PGA. College football is over with the national championship game. Georgia's your winner. Men's college hoops, women's college hoops, WNBA when it comes back around. Everything they've got for you. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. All you got to do right now is download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. You deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget, use the promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for instant deposit match up to $100. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Don't have time for a lot of calls and texts. I kind of went a little long there in segment number 2, so we'll jump right into it. Chef Nate in Denver, he's calling to talk about what he thinks the Raiders need to do in the draft as far as addressing the quarterback position. Here he is, Chef Nate in Denver.
Hey, Q, this is Chef Nate calling from Colorado, Denver to be specific, and I just got done listening to the Tuesday show, and so I just want to talk a little bit about the quarterback situation. I kind of disagree with you a little bit. I love you, but you're saying the Raiders are going to sit there at number 7, take the best available tackle, defender, whatever, but if you take a look at the playoffs and some of the big names in quarterbacks, you're looking at, Justin Herbert, first round early picks at quarterback. So I think we need to do whatever, move up to get our guy, whoever that may be. I'm not sure who that would be. But we need that quarterback, whether it be to move up in the draft or what have you. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I've seen it with, Denver, with Kansas City. We need to do the same. And I'm willing to give Josh McDaniels another season to kind of figure that out, all right? But, yeah, let me know what you think, and go Raiders.
Thank you, Chef Nate, for the call. I appreciate you. And, look, I don't disagree with you. The Raiders at some point got to go out and get that stud quarterback, right? I was pounding the table for them to go get Jalen Hurts a few years ago. They weren't able to get him. The Eagles jumped up and got him first. Well, now you see what he's doing with Philadelphia. The Raiders need to get their Mahomes. They need to get their Herbert. They need to get their Burrow, their Allen. They need to find their guy. The problem is, right now, I wouldn't give up that much-needed draft capital to go get that guy right now because the team has so many holes to fill, right? I mean, again, when the Chiefs, they targeted Mahomes, they traded up to get Mahomes, but they were already a team that was in the playoffs consistently with Alex Smith. They thought, okay, this Mahomes kid could put us over the top. Like you said, you're not even sure what quarterback they would go move up to go get. I just don't think it's a very good calculated risk if you move up from 7 and put yourself in position. And look, at 7, a quarterback might fall to you. right? I mean, of course, we're going to see so many mock drafts before it's all said and done. But, I mean, you never know. These guys, teams might go up and get a defensive guy. A couple teams might go up and get a couple quarterbacks. I mean, you just don't know how it's going to shake out. So at 7, it actually might be okay to sit there and get the quarterback that you want. But I would just, with all the holes that the team has, I just think that you've got to shore up that offensive line one way, one how. You've got to shore up the defense. The defense needs to be completely overhauled. I don't care who your quarterback is. If you're not having a strong defense and a solid offensive line, they're not going to win a lot of games. It's just going to be as simple as that, right? You could try to mask it. You could try to put, masking tape on it, but we all know how that shakes out. It doesn't last very long. So I just don't think that it makes a lot of sense for the Raiders to go all in and say, hey, we're going to trade up and go get, say, Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. I don't see it. And those are the two guys that I would target. Will Levis, I know he's a good quarterback. I know he's got a lot of upside. He's got a lot of size, strong arm, but he had a down year, and it just doesn't make me feel that comfortable going and drafting a guy, trading up for a guy that had a down year. But who knows? He might fall to the Raiders at 7, and they might say, you know what, this is really good value. Let's go get him. I don't know. But to trade up, it would cost a lot of draft capital. I don't think the Raiders could afford that with the holes that they have on the team. But thank you so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Next up, got a text from Rat in the 504. It says, hey, Q, it's Rat from the 504. Just thinking a bit after the end of the regular season, I remember you mentioning on Unnecessary Roughness about the Raiders having not just a plan, but the plan moving forward after moving on from Carr. Not sure what we'll do going forward, but everyone by now has heard Brady possible coming here. I'm with you in the camp of it doesn't matter who if we win a Super Bowl. However, in my opinion, if we bring in Brady, it needs to be a Super Bowl. To me, anything less than that would be a slap in the face of a fan base as loyal as Raider Nation, since we would most likely face yet another rebuild. That's Rat in the 504. And that's the thing about it. It's what I've been trying to explain to anyone who will listen. I don't know if Tom Brady is going to end up being the quarterback for the Raiders. I don't. I do know that there's interest in Tom Brady. I know that for 100% fact that the Raiders have interest. This is not me saying who I want them to go get. This is me telling you that I do know they have interest. Now, obviously, it's got to be mutual interest. They can't just say, hey, we want Brady and pick him, and he has to go there. He has to see what he likes. Tom Brady's not going to go anywhere where he doesn't think that he can win. So if he does say, hey, you know what? The Raiders have interest in me. I have interest in them. Obviously, they've already rolled out a plan, and that's what excites me about the possibility. That means that they're telling him, hey, we've got to go and fix this offensive line. We're going to fix it for you. He's not going to run around the yard. And, oh, by the way, you've got to have a defense that's worth the salt. So that also excites me because not only would that last however long Brady's the quarterback, but it could be sustainable. It could last a long time. And the Raiders, especially defensively, have not addressed that in a really long time. So for me, that would be the thing. And also, remember, the Super Bowl's in Las Vegas in 2024. So you know the headlines would be, hey, Brady, won Super Bowls with the Patriots. He went to Tampa Bay, hosted the Super Bowl, won there with the Buccaneers. Now he's going to Las Vegas, and he's going to try to host the Super Bowl there in Vegas. Not saying it's going to happen. You can write all the storylines and all the headlines you want, but it's up to the team to go get it done. But you know that would be the headline all year long. So there's a lot to like, but I understand where a lot of Raider fans don't want anything to do with Brady, and everyone, hey, he's old. But at what point is he going to just run out of gas? Well, if you go back and look at the numbers that he had with Tampa Bay, even though they're not a very good team this year, he's actually been a pretty good quarterback. So, and again, another point that I've been bringing up about Tom Brady, you think Devontae Adams would have a problem catching passes from Tom Brady? I don't think so. I think he'd be okay with that. No doubt about it. Thanks so much for that text, Rad. I do appreciate you. Got time for one more call. We'll take it from Nick in Connecticut. He's calling real quick to ask about the schedule. Here he is, Nick in Connecticut.
Hey, Q. It's Nick out in Connecticut. Thanks for all that you do, of course, and looking forward to the off season to see what shakes out as far as trades and all that. Quick question: just wondering if maybe you could explain to me how the schedule is determined. Maybe you can do a segment on one of the editions of the podcast this season. Or this off season, I should say. But once again, thanks for all you do, Q, and go Raiders.
Thanks so much for the call, Nick. I appreciate you. The NFL, they got their own system, the way they determine who plays who each year, and this is the formula that was sent out by the NFL. Home and away against its 3 division opponents, obviously. So for the Raiders, that's Kansas City, Denver, and also the Chargers. The 4 teams from another division within its conference on a rotating 3-year cycle, which is 4 games. The 4 teams from a division and other conference on a rotating 4-year cycle, that's 4 games. And 2 interconference games based on the prior year's standings, which is 2 games. These games match a first-place team against the first-place teams in the two same conference divisions the team is not scheduled to play that season. The second place, third place, and fourth place teams in a conference are matched in the same way each year. 1 interconference game based on the prior year's standings on a rotating 4-year cycle, which is 1 game. These games match a first-place team from one division against a first-place team in the opposite conference division that the team is not scheduled to play that season. The second place, third place, and fourth place teams in each division are matched in the same way each year. The home conference for this game will rotate each season with the AFC teams hosting the games in 2023. You get all that? Yeah, exactly. It's super, super confusing, but that's what the NFL does. So that's actually the whole blueprint that goes into how they schedule who's playing who each and every year. So I guess that kind of helped, maybe. If not, it probably just confused the mess out of you, because even me reading it confused the mess out of me too. So there's that. But the Raiders have their opponents. Obviously, we don't know the schedule for 2023. We don't know when it's going to be, but we do know who their opponents are going to be and exactly, where they're not where they're going to play. Well, yeah, we do. We know where they're going to play. And for the Raiders in 2023, looking at it right now, looking at my NFL communications they sent over, the Raiders will play at home the Broncos, Chiefs, and Chargers, Packers, Vikings, Patriots, Giants, Jets, and Steelers. And away, Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, Bills, Bears, Lions, Colts, and Dolphins. Those are the 2023 opponents. We just don't know the order in which they'll be played. So thank you so much for that. I do appreciate you. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have more calls and texts. We'll have more news and notes. And, of course, we'll have more conversation as we do each and every day. Again, thanks so much for making the Locked On Raider podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the show free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Thanks to my man Ari at Ari Produces on Twitter. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.